debate. For most of us, if you talk about Burma, the first name that pops to mind is that of pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi. She's the face of reform in what was once a pariah nation, but the one we should really now be talking about is a man called Thein Sein, a former general who's now the country's president. He's working hard to make his country become the poster child for political and economic reform. Since the end of the outright military rule in 2011, the West has moved relatively quickly to ease sanctions, but the military still holds sizable sway. They have a quarter of the seats in the new parliament, seem to be unaccountable for their actions, and have significant business interests. Not to mention the ongoing international concern over the government's violent treatment of its ethnic minorities. So has the West been far too quick to reward the Burmese government? With me to discuss this is Jean-Michel Lacombe, a former French ambassador to Burma. From New York, Arnaud, who's a Burmese activist with the Kachin Women's Association. And from London, David Camroux, a specialist in Southeast Asian studies at Sciences Po, normally based in Paris, but for some reason is with us tonight from London. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. First of all, Jean-Michel, let's talk about what we were talking about before the break, and that is the newfound wealth that this country is obviously going to experience, given the fact that it's put out a sign there, it's very much open for business. We were talking about who's set to benefit from this, but again, I just want to ask you, isn't there a problem that you could have the rise of oligarchs, so to speak, in this incredibly unstable, fluid situation?
But previously you had a tiny group of, we call them usually comprador, that is, the Chinese minority was in charge of foreign exchange, of trade with foreign countries, and it was a tiny little group. Now, the more you have, I think, the better it is. You must open this society to private enterprise. Will the people of the country benefit from it? Not right away, certainly. But ultimately, yes. And one thing, the plundering of teak wood, for instance, among many things, will stop.
David Camroux, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that with the democratisation, we can expect a greater transparency on those sorts of investments. And the end of sanctions will mean the end of illegal logging, which was then sent to China or across to Thailand. So that is positive. Yes, there are oligarchs. The number of oligarchs will probably increase. Some of them are military connected. Some of them, most of them are former military people themselves. But in Thailand and Indonesia, we've seen transitions from military rule, and this sort of necessity of making it worthwhile for those people to remain in business rather than to put back their uniforms is, as I've said previously, one of the prices that needs to be paid. What's required is a diversification of investment, particularly in areas which will create massive employment. We have an army of 400,000 people. If we begin to demilitarize, what do those ex-soldiers do? They're the tangible day-to-day problems of a transition, as we've seen in the Arab Spring. They have to be dealt with, and this is where the West has a role to play. The great problem of Burma, Myanmar, is it is a rich country in natural resources. It has a very educated diaspora, but there are tremendous problems of capacity within Myanmar itself. I know this personally. My son is working for an NGO in Myanmar, in Burma, precisely in the area of capacity building. The university has been closed basically for over two decades. So what is required is training public servants. What is required is building up the economic competence to govern a modern country. These are the challenges. This is the nitty-gritty of a transition. It's not very romantic, but this is where Europe particularly has a role to play in helping building capacity, in helping the Burmese people benefit from the incredible wealth that they potentially have, and making sure that this is distributed in a way that encourages development and not merely growth.
Oh no, this must be very frustrating for someone like you to hear all this, especially given the amount of money that we're talking about. And for you as a member of the Kachin people, it must be very frustrating, Arno, given that your community has been already very much shut out of the power elite.
Yes, I personally, I'm really frustrated about this. And as what we, as a civilian and as especially ethnic people in Burma, we don't have any benefit of this reform. Instead, after 7 months after 2010 election, there was a fighting going on with Kachin Independence Army and the government army. It's caused that hundreds of thousands of internally displaced people, and also there was mass of human rights violations going on. Women have been raped and we have been killed, and also torture and many kind of human rights violation is still going on. And also there was a lot of land confiscation and forced labor, and also you will see all this corruption throughout Burma. And also there was human rights violation escalation in the western and Shaanxi and also lower part of Burma. So as a citizen of Burma, I did not get any benefit from the reform.
So what needs to be done, Arno, in order for your community to gain access to power?
To gain of this benefit, right now, the government have not yet solved the essential problem of the Burma, the ethnic the problem. Right now, the government peace team and the Kachin Independence Army, they have been met formally 10 times, but for the ceasefire, but it not been implemented. We see any changing in Burma. So first, the government have to solve this problem and also to ensure of the ethnic rights. That we can enjoy, and also we need international community also to pressure. Right now is the time to pressure our government to go to the right track.
Jean-Michel.
Well, I think the only person who can deal with the situation of the minorities in Burma is Aung San Suu Kyi.
And not President Thein Sein?
Well, I think we'll have one day a problem there, maybe a showdown, because you have so many of them. The most difficult situation is in the Muslim state, the Rohingya situation, the Karenni, of course, the Shan state, and the Wa, which I was mentioning. At the beginning of the history of that country after independence, the father of Aung San Suu Kyi managed to have what he called the Panglong Agreement, that is to say a federal state, with the possibility for some of the minorities to opt out if they wanted to after 10 years. I think we need another Panglong Agreement.
David, this push to bring Burma back into the fold has been very much led by Washington. Is it the case that the Obama administration, as one journalist wrote, is taking a gamble by backing a winning horse that they're not really sure is capable enough of even winning or finishing the race?
Well, that's somewhat unfair. I mean, the transition has been essentially internally driven. There has been external pressure. There has been the effect of sanctions. ASEAN, with its constructive engagement, has also played a role in bringing about these sorts of changes. But yes, what we see happening is, perhaps we've seen this also in Indonesia previously, is there is a democratization that is occurring, but there's also the question of an equitable distribution of wealth between the different areas, the different regions of the country, in this case the different ethnic groups. And my impression is that the military government has given, well, the present government is looking after this development within the Burma heartland, and the army is being given a free rein in the peripheral areas. And that those question of reconciliation will be left to later. This is a sad reality, but this is the way things are unfolding, and because it's one step at a time, dealing with the Burma heartland first, the reforms there, and then the ceasefires and bringing about reconciliation afterwards. I don't think this is a reason to stop supporting the process. It may be a reason to suggest that both processes of reconciliation, democratization have to occur at the same time. As Mr. Lacombe has just mentioned, what is required is a new panlong, is a new kind of bargain between the different groups, the different nationalities within Burma. But to be fair, the opposition itself is divided. There are cleavages between the Burma majority part of the opposition and the ethnic groups. There's not necessarily a united opposition role in this kind of process. So it's very difficult to deal with a situation where you've got both ethnic differences, religious differences, and claims on territory all at the same time. We've seen historically throughout Southeast Asia dealing with those three issues together is very, very complicated.
But just how much of Washington's drive to bring Burma back into the fold is really also driven by their desire to wind back China's influence in that part of the world?
Well, China is partly the loser in what has occurred in Burma, because the regime basically opened up and began to democratize precisely because it had been pushed too closely into the arms of the Chinese. And China has always, throughout history, been the enemy of the Chinese people. So, yes, the people of Myanmar is part of the kind of soft hedging or the congagement, containment, engagement that is occurring in relation between China and the United States. But I think it's also important that there needs to be cooperation between China and the United States and the West within Myanmar. China has legitimate strategic interests. It is building a pipeline to get its oil from the Middle East, instead of taking it through the Straits of Malacca, through the South China Sea, piping it across Myanmar. And, China's desire for some kind of sufficiency in its energy resources is legitimate and should be acknowledged as such. So we should be seeing more of a partnership. And one of the impacts since the opening up is that Chinese companies in Myanmar are behaving in a more respectable kind of way. Along the pipeline, they are now building schools and they're building clinics. Previously, they were just concentrating the land and building the pipeline. So, I think that there has to be a cooperative approach towards this country, which has suffered so much, and yet has such enormous potentiality, particularly a people who are extremely hardworking, well-educated, many are very clever, and at least those that had the opportunity for an education, and the tremendous human resources that exist there. And what is required is a little bit more of a cooperative approach in helping, in nudging along this long process of transition.
David, thank you for that. Jean-Michel, you mentioned earlier about Aung San Suu Kyi. There have been some who've actually noted their disappointment in her performance so far, saying that she's favouring the company of old business cronies, that she's not out there sort of fostering a new political leadership as such.
Just to come back on what has been said a few minutes ago, I don't think all this would have been possible without receiving a nod from China. They have high stakes in Burma. obviously the situation was getting out of hand. They don't want to be seen in a company of Burmese junta, and you have to keep that in mind when you think about North Korea. Now, the position of Aung San Suu Kyi is very difficult. She has to wait and see until her country is a truly democracy in transition. Then maybe she will be able to act.
Arnaud, do you believe, or rather, are you disappointed with the performance by Aung San Suu Kyi so far, particularly in relation to your community and other minorities in the country?
Well, to be honest, well, we are a little bit upset of she silence of the situation in Kachin state, Kachin people. However, I do understand right now she's become a politician, and now she have to walk very fine way, and she have to be more careful.
Arnaud, do you think, despite what you've just said about Aung San Suu Kyi, that there actually is a new generation of young political leaders there already who are capable of moving this country, of transforming it into a vibrant democracy?
Excuse me, sorry. I lost.
I just said, given your comments about Aung San Suu Kyi, but I just want to ask you whether you believe that there's also, as well, or rather, is there a new generation of young political leaders who have the wherewithal to transform the country into a vibrant democracy for everybody?
Yes, there was now a new generation. We really try hard to push our country to really democratic country. We said a federal democracy, to go to the federal democracy. Yes, we also believe that we can also push the country to really go for a new democracy country.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for the debate, and I want to thank my guests, Jean-Michel Lacombe, Arnaud and David Camroux. Do stay with us here on France 24.